Hello, hello. Welcome to Total Truth Show, episode 49. We're going to chat about the truth about sexual abuse today. My name is Aldwyn Altuney from the Gold Coast in Australia.
And my name is Ken Kleinberg, and I'm coming to you all the way from the USA in San Diego County, California.
Hi, and I'm Michelle Sleight, and I'm coming to you from Brisbane.
And we'll be right back with this very hot topic and an amazing expert in Michelle right after this short introduction.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Total Truth Show, hosted by myself, Ken Kleinberg from San Diego County, California.
And I'm Aldwyn Altuney, known as the Media Queen from the Gold Coast in Australia.
And our goal here on this show is to help you to break away from the mainstream media propaganda and lies, the disinformation and misinformation that's out there in the mainstream, and really help you to start questioning everything and start doing the research for yourself. We want to punch through all of that disinformation and misinformation. Our goal here is to raise global consciousness to quantum critical mass and then pave the way for a new awakened civilization. And we would love for you to come along for the ride. Don't take our word for it. The things that we share here on the show, that goes for our guests too. Start doing the research for yourself. Start going and asking the questions for yourself. Get out there and really find the real truth behind things. So with that, let's get started, you guys. Let's dive into today's episode. Once again, welcome.
Yes, welcome. And what a hot topic this is today. I know our special guest I've known for quite some time. She's actually a member of our Mass Media Mastery group, and she's extraordinary, and it blows me away what she's been through and how she's come out the other end, and not just come out powerfully, but empowering others as well. She is a victim of at least 7 sexual assaults that we know about. She has the knowledge of what it's like to be a victim, and her work empowers others to live trigger-free, enriched lives. Michelle has had the unique opportunities to speak with rapists openly. She talks on this topic, offering a voice for victims and change in what is a sea of misinformation and silence, an area shrouded in fear where resourceful change must take place. Welcome aboard, Michelle. Great to have you with us all the way from Brisbane.
Thank you, guys. Yes,
and
thank you.
Of course, Ken, my co-host, always a pleasure seeing you as well from San Diego. And gosh, this is such a hot topic, and something that, often, parents don't know how to speak to their kids about, sex and about sexuality. And, often when sexual assaults happen, I know that a lot of people live in a lot of shame and guilt, and they sort of take it on board that they've done something wrong and they don't know how to speak about it. So can you share some of your story, Michelle? Where did it first happen for you, and what's your journey been like?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Can I just touch on something that you brought up? And I think it's something that I really would like to address. I address it in my book.
Sure.
So sexual assault and sex have nothing to do with each other. It's simply that the way in which sexual predators, or these type of predators, choose to get what it is they need, it is of a sexual nature, right? And it does affect us, obviously, in some way, shape, or form. But they are very different. And having experienced both of them a lot, I can say they are really very, very different, right? Really very, very different in every part of that process. So yes, I started this journey when I was 5 years of age. So I remember my Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs book. I remember, my first dolly, and I remember being sexually assaulted. And those are my first early memories as a child. And so it was a difficult time, because not only was I sexually assaulted, but the person was in part of my extended family. And so I then had to hide from this person and watch them doing to other people. And I had to watch adults seeing it and not seeing it. So, yeah, that was really, really an interesting time. But I was very, very lucky in that my parents were the sort of people that did encourage questions and did encourage curiosity, right? Especially my mother. My mother is an extraordinary person. And while she wasn't really able to cope with what was happening to me in terms of sexual assault, she gave me so many other resources and skills as a child that it led me to be able to actually start to ask questions and to watch and to learn. And when I was old enough to be able to identify sexual predators while they were actually hunting, while they were out in public, they were beginning to groom people, they were, putting in the groundwork, or they were following on, and that, they would say, oh, yeah, I'm going to rape that person next week, and then the weekend after, I've just started working on them, rah, rah, rah. And so I got to learn from these people how they do what they do and how they get away with it, and how we make it so easy for them. And that's a really hard truth, right? It's a really hard one that gets stuck right there, right? Because we do. Simply because we don't know that we do, but we do. Yeah.
And in a lot of cultures, there's a lot of abuse that can happen that is, quite easily sort of just washed under the carpet, and it's something that's been ingrained for a long time, where one partner, and it goes both ways with sexual abuse. Of course, we have some women abusing men as well. It goes the other way.
Children
and children. This is so ingrained in some cultures and so so easily dismissed, like it's, just get over it and you'll be right, and, that kind of thing. Whereas really it can be so scarring mentally, emotionally, physically. For years, people can carry that. And particularly with you, it happened at 5, between the age of, up to 7, something like major like that happens, that can seriously impact your future.
And it did. It seriously did. I think, though, Aldwyn, I think people don't know what to do. We've never had a conversation about this in a way that is okay, right? So we don't have the conversation. And that's part of the problem, is because we're not having a conversation, and the conversations that we have had in the past aren't accurate. They're very, very inaccurate. And so it just leaves us vulnerable, right? So there's so many different ways in which you can actually be affected by the subject, other than being directly affected as a victim of the assault itself, that they have get out of jail free alibis, they manipulate, they blackmail, it's incredible, really, the world of sexual assault and all the moving components in it. And so we often focus just on one thing or the other. And even like my tribe, right, we're an incredibly brave group of people. So I was sexually assaulted at 5, at 8, at 17, 18, 21, 23, 26, 32. That's, and it never ceases to amaze me when I'm talking to someone who is one of my tribe, one of my family, right? How extraordinarily courageous they are, because I know what living with this is. And it doesn't matter whether you've got to the other side like me and you're trigger free or not. This is something you live with for the rest of your life. So I'm sitting here today and I'm talking to you about the subject, but I'm very physically aware of all of those assaults. So this is something that we can never, ever wipe under the carpet or say, oh, look, I could just try not to think about it. No. And actually that's almost as bad as the assault itself, when we say things that are unhelpful like that. So we need to have a little bit of a better conversation and a bit more knowledge, which is why I wrote the book. This is a handbook. It spells out some truths, right? They're not necessarily truths that we want to face. One of the big problems in raising children is where there's sibling abuse. And this is something that parents don't pay much attention to, or don't. What would you do? What would you do if your daughter came to you and she's 8 and she said that her brother had done things to her? Hey, how would you deal with that?
Well, good question.
Oh my gosh, let's not do it. Or, and this is the thing. We don't have a plan for how we're going to deal with something. We don't have a conversation around how that could best work. And so we don't really know what to do or how to respond. So, while we're not having the conversations, or we're having conversations but they're not accurate, we just create grey areas, and those grey areas are where these people operate. Yeah.
So what do you do? I mean, what do you recommend that people do?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to be running some workshops for parents next year. So reach out to me and come along. And I'll also be doing a lot of training next year for, we here in Australia have this new legislation around psychosocial hazards, which includes sexual assault of whatever form in the workplace. And so I will be doing a lot of talking about that. But essentially, the book lays it out, but there are 3 components. So let's have a look at them. You need to be aware. You need to be informed. You need to have information that's accurate and correct. Right. So it's really important. It's the reason I wrote the book. Can't tell you how many conversations I hear, and it's so inaccurate. So inaccurate. And then you need to have a plan. It's so important to have thought about, if something happens, what's that going to look like, and have thought about what you could do. I was talking with somebody who was dragged off of the footpath, sexually assaulted behind some bushes, and left in a state of trauma and shock. She was walking up the street. A car of young men went past, stopped, grabbed her, and pack raped her. Right? Now, that is horrific, but it's not something that's, unfortunately, it's not untypical of situations where victims become a victim again. If we have a plan, even in a traumatized state, if we've thought about it hard enough, if we've thought about it long enough, what that could look like, then it's something we can fall back on, right? There's always a beginning, a before, a middle, and an after with this topic, always, those 3 working components. So it's what can we do at the before stage? And when I was 46, I would move to the Philippines. My husband was working there. We were living there as expats, and I went to a Halloween party. It was an expat Halloween party. Went to the toilet, and I was sitting on the toilet when a fellow expat forced the door open and came in. Now, I wasn't going anywhere. It was a tiny little toilet. The band was right outside the window. No one was going to hear me scream, right? But because I am who I am, and because I've got to the point that I've got to, I was able to disarm this person. Simply, I just said to him, okay, I accept, while he's busy laughing and his zip's undone and he's, about to assault me. I said, okay, here's the thing. I accept that you're here to rape me. I've got that. And I really did. I did accept that. I knew I couldn't do anything about it. But here's the thing. There's always a best possible outcome for you. And so I said to him, I want you to know, though, that there's going to be blood and there's going to be evidence that I didn't want this. And I'm going to tell people. I'm going to tell everybody. And this is significant. It was very significant for him because you're never the first. You're very rarely ever going to be the first victim, and you're never going to be the last, right? So this particular person was sexually assaulting a group of women every single weekend. They lived in fear of who it was going to be. So if I had spoken up about it, then that would have affected everything else that he had going on. He had things going on with the office staff. He had things where he sexually assaulted other expats that came to audit. And he had this group of women, right? I didn't know any of this at this point in time. I found this out later. But I certainly was a threat to everything else that he had operational, right? So he turned and he left. But there was something interesting. He had never met someone like me. And he used to watch me. I used to see him peeking around the side of buildings or peeking around people, observing me, because I was an unknown to him, something that he'd never experienced as a victim who could actually be able to take an action to have a little bit of control, right? Usually you go straight into shock. Shock shuts you down. Then you've got freeze, flight, or fight. Shock takes all conscious thought away, the ability to be able to do what I did. It takes it away, right? And then if you're really lucky, you freeze. I've done them all. And in fact, when I was 8, I did them all, right? Of the 3 options, freeze is the least amount of damage to your body. If you run and they catch you, man, you pay for it. And if you fight, and I've certainly done that, the damage to your body internally and externally can be really very significant and can take a month just to be able to go to the toilet and wee without wanting to cry from the pain. So, people say, oh, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Well, if you're lucky enough to freeze, then, be grateful for that, because that was really a best possible outcome in terms of your physical well-being. And then there's always the after. It's what do we do next once something's happened? What do we do? And it's got to be really about medical. You've got to make sure that you are okay. There's the morning after pill. I know women who are raising children of their rapists, and they've said to me, I love my child, but he looks exactly like his father, the man that raped me. And while I love him, and I would never not have him, it's hard. It can be very, very hard. So think about this, the morning after pill, Also, you might need stitches. And you also got to think about sexually transmitted diseases and there are some medications that you can take, but you've got to have the swabs. You've got to find out how to move forward and look after your health after something like this. And of course, it's important to have forensics. Now, I'm a big advocate for the criminal justice system, but it's also something that is very inequitable for victims of sexual assault. It's very hard to get there, to get police to take an action is really hard. And to then be able to actually get into court is really, really difficult. So we need a lot more equity around that. And that's not just here. I did work with a girl in America during COVID. And what's really interesting, 25-year-old girl, beautiful person, and she'd been going into the police station trying to get them to go and arrest her rapist. And she reached out to me, and we had a conversation. She went out. She contacted me. She was going back to rehab for the 3rd time. 2 weeks later, she contacted me. I'm out of rehab. I'm ready to do something. Help me. And so we worked together 6 sessions, and her life changed from the very first session. But after 6 sessions, she could go into the police and she could talk to them in a way that she got them to take an action, to be able to go and arrest him and take it seriously enough that he had no bail. And when she spoke to me after she'd been to court, she said, Michelle, it was the most empowering experience of my entire life. She said, I sat there and she said, everybody else bawled their eyes out. The only time I cried, and she said it was just a trickle, was when I talked about the internal damage that he did to me. And she said, but I walked away from there and I had represented myself. I had said, hey, what you did was not okay. And I had respected myself and I'd done it in a really empowered way, right? And she walked away from there, super empowered. I know people that have got a guilty verdict or a guilty plea and they've walked away and wanted to commit suicide. That is not a good outcome, right? So it's important that when you're doing that medical, that you get the forensics. You can decide later whether or not you want to go to court and how that's going to look for you. It's important to have the evidence there should you ever choose that's something that you want to do when you're ready. And it always has to be about what was important for you. That's really, really important. You've got to focus in on what is it I'm telling myself, what's important to me. Don't listen to anybody else. It's really important that you know what's important to you, because other people could be A, feeling uncomfortable that it happened and they don't want to know about it, or B, they might tell you what they think, but would they really follow their own advice? And C, it's not their life. It's yours, and it's how you are going to become empowered after this event, how you're going to live the rest of your life. How's that going to look for you? Now, I say it in my book, I say it to a lot of people, you know, when it comes to being the most dysfunctional person that you will ever meet, I was, you know, cap and gown, PhD in it. Absolutely. And I talk to people who have, you know, used drugs as a way of trying to cope. And I say to them, you know, my drug of choice was bulimia. Sometimes it took a long time, even though I'm vomiting my guts out. But it was the only thing that quietened the voices, stopped that feeling of that when you're triggered and you can smell them and you can feel them and you can hear their breathing and you know that look in their eye when they are raping you, that look that they have. And to be able to just make all that go quiet, even if it's for 5 minutes. Oh my God, that's something, you know, that really is just a bit of peace and quiet. It's just so good. Yeah. And I think here's the thing. I was lucky that I was always learning. I walked in on a pack rape about to start with a friend of mine, but I knew everybody in the room. So I was able to go and speak to each and every single one of those men about what they were about to do. And many of them had been manipulated. They did not realize that what it was they were about to do was what they were about to do. How it had been packaged, sold to them was very different, right? Others were compromised. The rapist had something on them, and so they helped recruit other men to be there. And these are other ways in which we really must make sure we educate our children. It's not just and how to perhaps deal with the before, the middle and the after, but also there's so many different types of victims in this conversation, in this subject, so many that people don't realize. And the other thing is, and I can't stress this enough, it's big money, big business. Buying and selling alibis, victims, information. Some people just earn a living from grooming people and then on sell it. It's huge. So there's so many different aspects to it, right? And it's really important that we take care of ourselves, and we educate our children. Now, I always say the proof is in the pudding. the tasting of the pudding, right? Something might look good and smell good, but is it really good? You got to taste it to see, right? And then I always say the sprinkles. So the proof of the tasting of the pudding was when I stood in that toilet and I was able to send that person packing. And I felt then I had something maybe that I had to offer other people, and I did. However, the sprinkles on top of that little cupcake came because my children were able to take actions when they were confronted. And here's something very, very interesting, and I'll share it with you. My daughter was on a train coming home from school. There was somebody who was on the periphery of her friend group, and he started to groom her, and all he did was brush the side of her arm like that. She immediately shut him down, slapped his hand, told him to get away from her, never touch her again, never to come near her again, that he's disgusting. And then he said to her, this is a grade 10 boy. Now, that was about 6 years ago. So just imagine the damage that he's done. He said to her, you know what? You're the first person who's ever really known what it is that I'm actually doing.
Oh.
That was the first step in touch to groom. And it wasn't touch or bump or anything else. It was a particular type of touch. So fast forward a couple of weeks, she's sitting there with her group of friends having lunch, and she looks across, and there this boy is, and he is sexually assaulting her friend there in the playground in front of everyone. And so she told him off and sent him packing. And he went running. Her friend got very upset. And she said to her friend, what is it? What's wrong? And he said, he's been doing that to me for months, and I haven't been able to stop him, and you just did. What's wrong with me? And she said, there's nothing wrong with you. She said, I've been trained and you haven't. So there are things, I'm sitting here and I'm evidence, myself and my children, that there are things that we can do as individuals. We can't sit around and wait for somebody else to solve the problem. Each and every one of us is responsible for taking an action, for having plans, for having thought about this, for having some way in which we educate ourselves correctly, and some way in which we have plans so that we're prepared, we've thought about it, and then to be able to take care of ourselves if that something happens. Get ourselves to some medical facility that's going to help look after us. Get ourselves some support psychologically to be able to begin to process everything that happened, right? Because it's really very important that we don't go down the rabbit hole, that we say, okay, this has happened. You know, wish it hadn't, but it has, right? It's just like anything else. It's happened. Something's happened. Someone's run into your car. You've run into someone's car, right? You swap details. You've got insurance. They've got insurance. Okay, it happens. These things happen. It's a fact of life. Here in Australia, I don't know how long we've been talking for, but one child every 9 minutes is sexually abused. How that's even acceptable on any level, I don't know. That's the most disgraceful statistic. But that's just here in Australia. And globally, if you Google it, you'll see it's on the rise everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. So it is a topic we do need to be able to take action individually and as a community and as a society.
Amazing. And having these conversations, of course, makes the world of difference. And we've just seen recently Sound of Freedom movie come out, which is around human trafficking for sexual abuse. And that's a $150 billion industry. Blows me away, human trafficking of children for sexual abuse. And that's a whole other level. And as you say, there's so many levels of this sexual abuse. And actually, I was thinking back, as you're sharing, I was thinking back to some of my early experiences. Do you want to say something before I go to my early experiences about that?
Yeah. I just want to add in there's a great book actually out by a girl who was sexually assaulted by, a pedophile who married her mother. And then once she went past that particular age that was of interest to him, he then sold her. So it can begin as something as simple as not the big, human trafficking thing, but it can then move into that. Because that's what I was talking about before. It's big business, right?
Yes.
So you might be sexually assaulted by Joe Blow, right? And then your details can be sold. We don't necessarily talk about this as being part of that look at it, like, okay, human trafficking, and then we've got sexual assault, other types of sexual assault. But here's the thing: a lot of the times they're taking from here and they're selling here. So it can lead to becoming human trafficking on the level that you're just talking about, from simply starting here to growing here, unfortunately. Anyway,
absolutely.
keep going. I love your stories.
On many different levels. And, I think back to when I was 13 I was actually in China. Two experiences happened where I was sexually assaulted one I was sexually assaulted and one I was attempted sexual assault. I was 13 in China. I was actually part of the Australian Table Tennis Academy. I was a top junior table tennis player at the time. And we toured China with, there were 11 people on the team, and 5 of them were under the age of 17. There were 4 guys who were 17, and there was me who was 13. And everyone else was sort of, older. And there was one guy I really liked who was 17 from Melbourne, actually. And I actually really liked him, and we got together one night. However, where that got to was, it actually ended up being a sexual assault. Like, it started out as I actually liked him, and it started out as just sort of very innocent, and then it became very ugly very fast. And I remember the next day feeling absolutely disgusting about the whole experience. And I remember the 4 guys were all like laughing about it the next day and and knocking me and here I was overseas, and it was really very traumatic. Actually, now I think back, and it's interesting, I kind of blocked that out of my memory until we're having this conversation now. How awful that felt. And it was absolutely disgusting. And to think that I sort of willingly, I guess, entered that sort of intimate situation, but then it just went ugly. It got forceful. It got forceful when I didn't want it to be forceful. I'm not going to go into detail because it was really quite horrific. However, this can happen too, right? Sometimes you could start out sort of willingly intimate, and then it can get ugly. And so that happened. And then there was another situation where at the Chinese embassy at a party, and there were these 3 Russian guys who pushed me into a corner of a cupboard and actually tried to take my clothes off and were rubbing themselves against me. And I actually fought my way out of that somehow. I don't know how I did it. I remember having these stiletto boots on at the time as a young girl. And I was a pretty feisty young teenager. And I just got out of there. I just pushed them out, and I got back to the party somehow. But that could have easily have got very ugly too if I went into shock, or if I didn't know how to deal with that at the time. And there was no way they were getting any close. They'd already sort of taken, started to take, and 3 guys and me, I guess I was fairly strong being an athlete. However, still, I think back and I think, oh my gosh, that could have been so much worse at that situation. And And, you know, there's probably many, many other examples. And I'm sure many people here could relate in some way, maybe where there's been some level of sexual abuse, which is basically unwilling sexual activities, right? It's not necessarily intercourse. It could be any kind of sexual activity. It
Yeah.
could be oral.
Yeah.
You know, it could be anything like that, and how that can stay with you if you don't let it go. And of course, we can't change the past. We do have to, you know, learn from these experiences, I think, and
That's right.
and not make them mean anything about that I did the wrong thing, or you know, that I'm bad and wrong because this happened. You know, there's two parties here at play, or sometimes more than two parties, sometimes multiple people at play, and you can only be responsible for what you can do and your part in it, and learn from that and move forward in a more empowering way. And thank you for those joining us here too. We've got Diana Belrose on LinkedIn here. She said, the truth is in, tell your story, or maybe she wants to tell us a story, tell you a story, possibly Diana. So feel free to share if you're watching us on social media.
Or any questions. I would like to say something, Aldwyn, just in relation to what you've shared, which thank you, that was very brave. And I have the utmost respect for you. So thank you. And that is that what many people don't realize is that sexual assault is actually planned, and it is instigated, and it is intentional, right? So that person where you began to get you liked him, and then you instigated something, and then it went too far. No, it was always going to end up that way. Right?
Yeah.
It was always his intention to do that. And this is another really big pill that we have to learn to swallow, is that they are really good at putting you in a state where you feel comfortable and safe, where they can get you alone, and then where they do what they want. And if it's part of their MO, there's how they like it to be, great. The second story that you told me, if they were really intent on doing something, they would have. So you didn't freeze. And obviously, by not freezing, you didn't meet their MO. And so they let you go. Because if you think about it, they didn't have to. So, and it's like we often, and I often hear people talking about things from the perspective of the experience, but if you understand it from the other side as well, these people are driven by a need, right? These are mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, grandparents, right? Then they're perfectly normal in every other way, in every other aspect, except that they have this particular need to do this. And you will never see it coming because they don't want you to. Sometimes they'll say something to you, and I've spoken to a lot of people like myself, and they'll say, yeah, he said this really strange thing, and I didn't realize at the time what it meant. And then after, I realized. And they may well give you some little code thing, like, for example, if you go for a walk I got a bit teary when you were telling your story. You might go for a walk and they might say something like, no one knows we're here. And that's them in their secret code letting you know that in the future they're going to assault you, but you could never know that. But it's their humor around, ha, 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 you don't know what's coming. It's their humor around that, right? So it's really, I always say it's never our fault, and it's not. And the reason it's not is because it is highly intentional on their part. It is not something where they lose control. It is intentional. It is planned. Yeah. So it can never be anything to do with us. It doesn't matter what we say or what we do or what clothes we wear or don't wear or how short or how long or what we eat or don't eat or where we stand or where we don't stand. It's got to fit in with their MO, how they want it to be, how they've set it up. And if it doesn't, like two of the people that assaulted me, I woke up to find it happening, right? That was their MO. And speaking, especially the last person, speaking with another person he'd sexually assaulted, he actually dragged her off a toilet and slammed her head up and down on the tiles until she passed out.
Oh my gosh.
And
Wow.
then she came to with him raping her, because he has to have that. And, and that was important to him. That was part of his thing. It has to be how they want it. Some people are opportunists, and you often find they work in pairs as opportunists, but not always. But for most part, it's planned, and it's you're groomed in some way, shape, or form that you won't even know until such time. Or the people around you are groomed so that they don't step in and interfere, or they think it's okay. And therefore,
I think back to the 17-year-old who sexually abused me, and then it was like he was bragging to his friends. It's like he had some kind of power over me, like he had some, like he's the man, kind of prove himself. And it's like, they say hurt people, right? And I guess as a teenage boy, he's trying to, it's like that he's trying to prove he's a man and all that kind of thing. Like there's a lot of that sort of thing that can happen as a teenager.
I don't know. This is really specific. It's not so that people know he's getting some. It was an intentional thing where he wanted to hurt you and take something from you.
Yeah.
We have to be honest. This is the truth here, and we have to accept the truth. These people want you to be hurt in the most horrific way possible, and that is through sexual assault. I had somebody who was in a domestic violence situation. She'd got out of both, but she had also been raped by somebody else, and she said to me, "I would rather be beaten than raped."
Wow.
I don't think you should have either of those things, right? No. This is the most damage that they can possibly do to somebody, and the most empowerment that they can get. And we have to be honest about that fact.
True. And we do take on the energy of someone that we sleep with, whether it's intentional or unintentional. We actually take on their energy. So I think there's a whole lot of cleansing that needs to happen multiple ways. And if someone comes inside you and they haven't got a condom on, which most likely most rapes, I'd say they wouldn't have a condom. And so that would be also something absolutely horrible, because you don't know if you've caught some STD, as you said there.
That's what I was saying before. You have to get to a hospital. Yeah. That's right. You have to get to that hospital. Ken, you've been really quiet. Have we been talking too much and you haven't been able to get anything in?
I've just been waiting for my opportunity to slide in there. And I haven't wanted to insert myself either, just because I think this is a very careful topic, and it's a very sensitive topic, and it's a very deep topic for a lot of people. So, I just kind of wanted to give the space that's needed for you guys to share. But one thing I will say, in regards to this, and it's in regards to grooming, it hurts my heart to hear these kind of things, and to know that these kind of things are going on in the world today. But something else I just want to throw out there for other people also to realize, it's just it's not just simply what's going on with people raping others and secretly preparing their victims for these kind of things. There's also, I just also want to touch on the fact that there's also a much bigger picture that's going on out there right now. Now I'm about to get a little political. So I just find it very interesting that, look at this grooming that's going on out there. Let's take, for example, here we go. I'll gaslight a company right now, because I probably will never shop there again, just because of what I've seen this particular company do. But Target, look at what Target has done. Look at what Target did a few months ago, putting a display out there for the LGBTQ, whatever kind of community you want to call that. So I'm not really concerned about, properly pronouncing all, the little sex and different things like that. But they put this stuff at the very front of the store so that people's children can look at it and then ask questions. Why is that? And da da da. And then look at what they're trying to do with our children in some of these schools. Children as young as 5, 6 are being told that they can change their sex and all this. What the hell is going on with that? There is man and there is woman. I'm sorry if I've just triggered off somebody by saying that. There is no it, they, them, all that bullshit that they're trying to sell people on. Excuse my language. But sorry, not sorry, also at the same time. It's just like, what the hell is going on? And as far as like, I love what you're doing, Michelle, and I love love the empowerment that I'm seeing that you're giving people. You're giving people their strength. You're giving people a way of combating that frozen state, if you will, the state where your mind goes into hypnotic because of the fact you're in fear, you're scared. Immediately, whenever somebody goes into fear or anxiety or has severe scared, if you will, your brain automatically goes into a hypnotic state, and all logical thinking, as you said, gets shut down. It's hard for you to even think logically. I notice it in simple things in my life, just very simple things. Whenever I'm just maybe intimidated by somebody or something or different things like that, at that very moment, it's so hard for me to actually think logically. Sometimes it isn't until later time I go and I'm just like, oh, this would have been better to do it this way. Why didn't I think of that then? Well, it's because that part of my brain was shut down at that time. What you are doing is you are giving people the keys to combat your brain shutting down so that that does not happen. I really applaud you for that, because that's what people need. They need the keys to keep their empowerment and to keep in control. But anyhow, back to, what I was saying. It's sick. It really is sick. And it's sick to see the levels that it is going to in our society today. And back to the original point I was trying to make, there needs to be more people that stand up for this kind of stuff. There needs to be more people that boycott companies like Starbucks, companies like Bud Light, companies like Target, who are putting this stuff out there. I mean, Bud Light's one thing. It's a beer company. Not very many children are going to see that. But you've got Target, you've got Starbucks. Do you want your kids seeing this agenda? Even down the street grocery store that we have here, I noticed that I don't remember what time of year it was. It was earlier this year. I walked in there and they've got all these pride balloons and everything else right in the front of the store. And your children are seeing that. More people need to stand up against this kind of stuff and start boycotting companies and start taking a stand. There is boy, there is girl, there is no it, them, they, whatever. And the child trafficking stuff that's going on, and just, I can't even imagine what these children go through. I cannot wrap my head around this kind of stuff. Oh my gosh. So anyhow, a lot to say, it was just like a big giant bleh all over the place, but there you have it.
I would like to jump in on something that you mentioned. And this is simply that, yes, our brain, we do shut down. It is a strategy that we have this life support comes in to freeze, flight, or flight to try and save our life, right?
Yeah.
And it is one strategy, but if we can actually use the other things that we're born with and have a strategy, which is what I had and what I taught my children, so that strategy will always come in to give you best possible outcome. That is exactly how you can avoid going into what you said at that shutdown, that hypnotic state. And it is a very powerful tool to immediately, instead of going down there, to go here, take that action, boom. Sometimes you're faced in life with a lot of bad options, but there's a best one. You know, maybe that's just how it is. And then what do you do next? But at least if you get the best option for you, it makes the path forward easier for you. Yeah. And I do think that it's important that when we're having these sort of conversations that we have the right information. I really, really do. And that is why I wrote this book. And in this book, I talk about an example of where we were at a netball training and my kids played netball. And there was somebody who was intentionally walking around with his shirt off. He had a pair of shorts and that was it. And I was running around the oval, which is what I did when the girls were doing that. And every time I'd come past, the parents were like, oh, my God, he's getting closer. What should we do? Oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God. So that already shut down. He was still half a football field away, and that already shut down because all they could manage was, oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God, right? So they were already shutting down. They were already in a state of shock, so they weren't thinking. And I would say to them, because I wasn't the manager and I wasn't the coach and I wasn't part of the team officials, I'd say, call the police. And then I'd go running around and then I'd come past and they'd be still, oh, my God, we don't know what to do. What should we do? I said, call the police. So by the time he stepped onto the court, I already had the police on the phone. And I stepped in between myself and the girls and I said, I've got the police on the phone. Right now, everything's being recorded. They are on their way. You need to step back. And it really shocked him. He was really surprised because they rely on the fact that we shut down, like you were saying, Ken, that we go into this hypnotic state, that we don't respond the way we think we might, unless we've really done something to make sure, and we've thought about it, and we've got a plan, and we've got some strategies in there to be able to do that. So it's really important, and it's really important that we teach our children. So we've got anger. That lets us know someone stepped over our boundary. It's only there to tell us something, and then we need to let it go, right? We've got sadness. It's there to tell us that something needs to change. We've got hurt. It's our teacher. We've got fear. If you start to feel, sometimes you can feel the hair on the back of your neck sticking up, right? If you start to feel a little uncomfortable, get out of Dodge. Right? Remove yourself from the situation because you're picking up on something, whether it's obvious consciously or whether it's instinctive or intuitive, you know that something's not okay, and you are creating an emotional state as a early warning system. And one of the big things is that that we're lulled, like Aldwyn was, into feeling safe. So that's bypassed. And we're manipulated into thinking we're safe so that we don't pay attention to that if it does come up, and then boom, right? But we have it there, and it's something we need to pay attention to. And then, of course, there's guilt. And guilt is there to tell us that perhaps next time we ought to do something a little different. That wasn't something that we feel comfortable with our own self doing, right? That's our way of monitoring our own behavior and growing personally. Right? So these are emotions that can really be useful and helpful. Here's the thing, though. They're only there to give us an indication that we need to pay attention to something, and then we need to let them go. Unfortunately, what happens is that when and it can be as simple as somebody sitting across from you at work and licking their lips while they're looking at you and having a particular thought. That's sexual harassment. and you feel really uncomfortable, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, you just ignore it or laugh it off. They enjoy your discomfort. However, what's the message you're sending to them and anybody else that might be wanting to take it further? That you are vulnerable. Right? So saying, oh, have you got dry lips or something? You need to get some lip tap, because licking lips like that, that's just really, really unpleasant. Right? You're putting down a boundary, right? You're saying, hey, look somewhere else when you lick your lips. Don't do it at me, right? But here's the thing, we immediately go into shock because we don't have anything to be able to give us a strategy that's going to give us an action to protect ourselves. And if we don't have that as the before, somebody else who is maybe wanting to take it further is going to think, yeah, that person's groomed them and softened them up, and now I'm going to come in for the kill. And I've spoken to so many people that have had things like that happen. Yeah, right? So, yes, this whole hypnotic brain thing, such a good point, Ken, and it's so important that we, first of all, accept that if it happens to keep us alive, and we don't expect what's going to happen until it happens. We don't know a lot of things until they happen. Hindsight is our best friend, right? But these are the things that we use to beat ourselves up. I should have seen it. I should have known. Why didn't I?
Yeah.
No, it can never, ever be like that, because simply once we shut down, we can't take an action. I've got 2 examples in my book of where people have come forward and shared their story, a little bit like Aldwyn. And I have broken down the steps and shown how that predator had created a situation, one to pack rape a young 14-year-old and the other to assault somebody at work, by creating a picture, painting a picture, and that then would say, well, hang on, I didn't, I was a bit drunk, you didn't say, it's all your fault. No. The biggest coup in history, can you think of what it is? The biggest, biggest coup. Can you think of what it might be? Have a think about that. Any ideas?
No.
So there was the Trojan horse, right? That was a really good one. Nobody saw anybody inside, brought all the soldiers in. No means no. How many times have you heard someone say that growing up? Did you say no? When you go into that hypnotic state, when you first hit shock, you're no longer now consciously, logically processing. You're now looking for the best way to stay alive, right? Mm-hmm. You can't say no if you go into shock freeze. And I've often said to some people, yeah, I was screaming, help, stop, this is rape, but didn't stop them, Even one example that I have in my book, where there were men in another room while someone was raping me, my own home. And no one did anything for quite some time until one person just could not. What they'd been sold did not marry up with what they were hearing me screaming. And so they subtly intervened. But, it's whether they went into shock, they were sold something and they went into this hypnotic state, right? And they just stayed in that place of what they were sold, and they couldn't, only one person out of a group of 6 couldn't reconcile and sort of came back out and took an action to help me. The rest didn't. They didn't move. They didn't do anything. So it's not just what's happening with the victim, it's what's happening with all the other victims that are out there that are part of this thing, right? So in this book, I have all my stories in one chapter, and everything else is information that's going to empower you. I had a lady who bought my book, and she contacted me. She said, I went to a funeral, and she has a little camper van. She said, I was halfway through the book, and I went to the funeral, came back to the campsite with my, little camper van. And she said somebody grabbed her, forced her up against the camper van, and was busy, about to assault her. And she felt herself going into this. She said, I could feel it coming on. And I just had this little thought popped into my head. She said, it was just this tiny little voice. And it said, what did Michelle say? What did she say? And she said, I just took an action. And he stopped. And then I distracted him. And then I was able to get into my vehicle and drive away while he was running around it, trying to open a door and get back to me. But she said, I was able to do something because I read half your book. I'm really looking forward to reading the other half. Right.
That's amazing.
So to have information that's actually going to support you and empower you, get you in a position where it might not stop someone from choosing. And this is the really important thing you have to understand here. It's their choice, nothing to do with you. You can't control other people's behavior or their choices, right? And you can't read their mind. You will never see it coming. So what someone else is going to choose to do is their choice. How you respond to it is something that you can do something about. And unfortunately, there is a lot out there that disempowers us and doesn't actually let us know that. I was talking to a group of women that work in a property management business. So they're going into people's homes to do inspections, right? And one of the women had called in and she'd said to her supervisor, I don't feel okay. I can't go to this house. I just don't feel okay. And the closer I get, and it was quite a drive, and she was halfway there. So she'd been driving for over an hour, but she just had to pull over. She was in a shaken state. And then this woman said, it was actually the supervisor that spoke up, and she said, you know what? You rang me and you told me that, you were struggling and you couldn't go. And she said, I did not respond correctly. Now I know you obviously didn't feel okay and I didn't support you. But now that I'd done this presentation, she was like, oh my God, now I know what I would do. And now we're going to change everything the way in which we do things. It turns out that this woman that had rung in for help had been a victim of sexual assault in her past. And the pressure, the anxiety had got so intense because she hadn't felt okay with the conversation, and it had built to the point where she had to pull off the road. Now, good on her for listening to all those emotions, and she pulled off and she said, I can't go. Right? Good on her. That was really, we have to learn to listen to ourselves. And anything and all this other stuff that we think, chuck it out. We need to be able to be really resourceful and resilient and have the strategies for ourselves. And that's why I wrote that book. And that's, I taught my children, I'm perfect. I'm okay. I'm right. If it happened again, I would be able to take the steps. I would be able to be okay, right? I wouldn't go down the rabbit hole. My children, they've been taught they're okay. I didn't need to, spend all our savings writing a book and doing all of the things that I'm doing. I did it because I realized that the conversations aren't changing. Same old people are saying the same old thing. So we've got all this style. And I mean, I have a degree, right? So I've been to university, I know. And what's taught there, the theory is great, but the understanding around this topic is not there in the way in which I understood it. And we're having conversations that disempower people. We have conversations where so many people have been to therapy and they've been told, you're not responding to the therapy. Excuse me? First of all, it's not a fault thing. And secondly, if a therapist is finding that after 1 or 2 visits, there is no improvement in the life of the person they're seeing, then quite clearly they're not the right person and they need to be finding someone who can step in and help on that level with that issue, right? But we're not responsible in that way. As a society, we don't think, oh, hang on, there can be something done. And I'm living proof that there can be, and the people that I help are living proof that there can be. So it's really important that we almost have to have a huge mind shift around this to every aspect of it. Yeah. Have we got any questions here, Aldwyn,
yes,
from people?
Yes, we'll come to, there's a comment there actually that I want to share in a minute. But I just want to share for those who are tuning in on audio, your book is called Insight, Up Close and Personal Profile of Sexual Assault. And it is available on Amazon, and we'll share some other links as well. We've got Laura Lawrenson saying, yes, you're right. She says, I've just realized the number of times I've been sexually assaulted without even recognizing it, just brushed it off.
Absolutely. That's so true. Oh my God, Laura, you know what? I did a book launch speech for my book, and it's one of the key things that I actually said in that is that we don't know that it was, we just know we weren't okay about it, right? We just know that we feel really bad about it, and we blame ourselves that we did something that we are not happy with. And that is so dangerous for us. And it's, but we don't realize. And the 2 examples in my book, both those women, their friends said to them, no, you weren't raped. But they were, right? So, Laura, thank you for sharing. So true. It is so important that we understand what it is. So we realize that we didn't make a choice to do something we didn't want to do. The choice was never ours to start with. Yeah. Thank you, Laura. That was amazing. Thank you very much for sharing and being on. Big hugs.
Yes, thank you on Facebook there. And actually, I can think of many sexual experiences I've had where it started out, all very lovely and ended up not so lovely. So, it's interesting when I think back, there's actually a whole lot more I could pull out as well that where that happened. And, I do things differently now, definitely do things differently. And I would say, no, that's not okay. And I would remove myself from that situation, So that's the thing, is to get conscious in those moments when you're triggered, you're challenged, you're in that fight or flight. You're sort of like, I've tended generally, if I'm confronted, I will freeze and I'll run. That's generally how it goes. However, I can definitely bring out the fight when I want to, right? When I really feel threatened, or where I feel my life is at stake, I will fight. And sometimes you have to do that. You have to conjure up whatever is inside you to get out of those situations and say, no, this is not okay. And to speak up, Michelle, as you say, speak up. Speak up, step up, say something, do something. Don't just willingly put up with it.
And here's the thing, I really like what you're saying, because empowerment's important. But here's the thing, I think that what's important is, and the example I gave of being in that toilet, little laces around my ankles, I wasn't going anywhere, was that I didn't get aggressive with this person. I was just very calm and matter of fact, right?
Yeah.
I just told him, this is how it is from my perspective. I get your perspective and I accept that. This is it from my perspective. You need to know that moving forward. That's how it's going to be from my end. And that example that I gave with like the licking of the lips thing, you're letting people know, don't cross my line because I will take an action, right? But you're doing it in a comfortable way, not in an over the top sort of, why do you keep doing that? If that is great, they love that. It's the Peter cry wolf scenario, and this is why I want to sort of wanted to bring this up. There are those who will provoke someone into overreacting to something, because it's then like the next time when they say, oh, look, he raped me. Oh, my God, last time you accused him of this, and now you're saying this, like Peter cried wolf, right? So the first time it's an overreaction, but it's actually orchestrated so that you have that, if that's your personality, right? Boom. And then the other thing comes in underneath. That is a tactic. See, they have tactics and they have strategies and they have all of this stuff. We need it too. We need to balance the scales. And by understanding their tactics, we can understand things. And by having the right strategies and having the right relationship with our emotional responses, we can maybe cut it off before we have to fight for our lives. We can maybe, very calmly let everybody in the vicinity who's watching this person, to see what's going to happen next, letting them know, letting everybody know, what's the message. You always got to think, what's the message I'm sending out here, right? What's that message? So if I'm sitting there and there's a man in front of me with this fly undone, I might say, oh, mate, your fly's, flying low, or, oh, you might want to zip up, because someone might take the wrong idea about what you're doing. And I'm sure that you haven't intentionally done it, but I just thought I'd let you know that it's happened, right? So then they'll zip it up, right? And they'll be like, oh, I didn't mean that, all right. But just say they did. They now know that that's not going to work with you, right?
Yes. And people will treat you.
Firmly put down that thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and people will treat you how you allow them to treat you too, right? And
that is very true. And that's why victims of sexual assault are sexually assaulted more than once, or they end up in domestic violence relationships or very unhealthy situations, because if you start to say, oh, I did something that I didn't want to do, so you're now running this abuse cycle here, and it's whatever you've decided is what you draw to you. And so you do it to other people and you allow them to do it to you. And that then you just have this constant cycle of unhappy, horrible experiences in your life. Doesn't matter what it is. It just will always be, you try so hard, but then boom, you're back unhappy and miserable and tears again, under the doona. Regardless of whether it's someone else that's been mean to you or taken advantage in some other way or whatever it is, So it's very important that we pay attention to our self-talk and that we pay attention to our intuition, which is trying to look after us.
Yes, and they say everything happens for us, not to us. So not being the victim of those circumstances either, because I think there's learnings in everything. And while some things might seem really unjust, they might seem really unfair, maybe there's some kind of learning there for all of us. And, turning your mess into your message or turning your pit into your purpose. I mean, that's exactly what you've done, Michelle, right? You've had these situations happen and now you've turned it around and you're now empowering others. Whereas if that hadn't have happened, for you, to you, for, however you want to look at it, then you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now, right? So
that's very true. I think though that when you're in that traumatized state, and what you're talking about, Aldwyn, is fairly new, right? It's part of a modern way of thinking. When I actually began, I was looking for answers, but when I actually began to very powerfully change my life by changing how I thought, that was right back sort of in very early 90s when all of this sort of thing was just beginning to come into Australia. Louise Hayes had just published her book on affirmations, very powerful thing, affirmations, very powerful. And there were other people out there that were bringing this type of thinking and understanding in. Someone said something to me, and it was, it's something about you attract what happens to you, or something like that. And I just it was sort of like, what the heck are you talking about? No one wants this to happen to them, because it wasn't very well framed. But it can be very, very triggering for people who think, I never asked for this, I didn't want this, but it happened anyway. And it's fact of life that things are going to happen to us that aren't necessarily going to make us very happy. It doesn't matter what it is, right?
Yeah.
Our parents get divorced. We have to move and we have to start a new school and we don't like the people there. A whole range of things are going to happen in our lives. And so you've got a choice. I had a choice. We've all got a choice. It can destroy you, or you can try and take what you can from it and use that to your betterment, to best possible outcome for you. And that's what I always talk about. What is the best possible outcome for you? It might be that you can't ever erase the event or experience. However, maybe you can have this much better life by taking what you can from it and using it for your own personal growth. Now you can say, it really sucks that I have to go through that to get that. Yeah, it really sucks. But here's the thing. Once you've gone through it, you've got a choice. Do I stay in a traumatized state, in a triggered state? Or do I say, okay, well, to be respectful to me, what's the greatest self-love to me? What do I owe myself? What's my responsibility to me? Because we are responsible to ourselves, right? Is that to bury it, ignore it, be destroyed by it, become addicted to other people's pity, all of those sort of things, stay in that perpetual loop? Or do I say, hey, no, I value myself and I'm going to stand up for me. Yeah, that happened and it's not okay. And part of that is that criminal justice system pathway, which needs so much overhauling so that it's more equitable for us. But here's the thing. The other part of it is, okay, I can find someone who can help me to take what this is and to create tools and use the knowledge and make that knowledge work for me, not just so I don't get sexually assaulted again, or if I do, that I cope with it better, but in all aspects of my life, right? So when I do, like I've been doing a lot of talks around sexual assault training for the psychosocial hazards legislation that we have coming in, that begins in January next year, and we all have to have the training. And I've been talking about this because taking something and using it to empower you will not just benefit you in the next time you're in a dangerous situation, it will also benefit you in having good rapport with people. Because the more confident and comfortable you are, the more you have self-trust, the more you're able to be vulnerable. If you're listening to your little antenna that says get out of Dodge, and you've got that confidence, to cut off a conversation with someone if you don't feel that that's somebody you really want to be talking to, you are able to have better working relationships with people, better intimate relationships with people. You're able to have better friendships with people. So taking that and using that event, and being sexually assaulted is a really sucky event. Trust me, I know. But to take it and to use it to your benefit for personal growth, just doing that process builds your self-respect, and it changes everything about the people that you draw into your world, and it changes everything about how you see the world, and it makes you realize that you have more control and that you can have a great life. So then you come into the realm of, okay, things are happening. Yes, I'm paying attention to it. So it's something I'm experiencing. Okay, so what do I chuck away? and what do I pay attention to grow, right?
Yeah.
This is the absolute key to being trigger-free and terrific. And it's right there when you are sitting there, as many of us have, in that just place, for whatever reason, you've got these choices. You can choose to bury it. You can choose to hide from it. It will keep coming up and you will live it. Or you can choose to say, okay, I'm going to stand up for me. And I'm going to reach out and I'm going to find someone who can help me do this. And I'm going to put me first. When I went, the last time I was sexually assaulted, I went to the Royal North Shore Sexual Assault Unit. And there was a beautiful woman there called Susan Kendall, who's now retired. And she was running it. And she used to have these group sessions. And we would some of us would be invited to go to the group. And, everyone would turn up and they'd say, oh, I'm doing better this week. I'm doing better this week. Yeah. I think I got through this week better. And I would go, no, I'm not doing better this week. I feel like shit. I'm sorry, but I got triggered and I'm still, I've got these things that have come up that I'm dealing with, but no, I don't feel any better. I was entirely honest. There was no point at which I compromised myself for anybody's benefit, right? If I didn't feel better, I said, but if I felt better, I did. And I acknowledged it, right? But the other thing that we all forget, we've lived through something that's absolutely horrific. Have we taken the time to celebrate the fact that, we're still giving life a go? I don't care how that looks. Okay, I vomited my guts out for years, but at least it kept me alive until I could find an alternative that was much better, right? It doesn't matter if it's about the fact that you're giving yourself a go. You haven't let them take everything off you. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that, Michelle. I love your passion. Oh, it's so great listening to you speak. I can listen to you all day. It's wonderful. Right. And, it's so moving what you share too. And it's such a great analogy of life is that, we are on this roller coaster ride of life. And sometimes, some cannonballs come our way and sometimes some things will throw us off course a little bit. However, just stay on that roller coaster ride of life. And as you were sharing, and I talked earlier about how I can bring out the fight in me. I thought of the Power versus Force book by Dr. David Hawkins that came out in 2014. And I just want to share that. Power versus force is, you don't have to be aggressive and you don't have to hurt people physically to actually bring out your force as such. So in the book, it actually explains how anyone can tap into their inner power to change their lives and the lives of those around them, because it is a ripple effect, right? It demonstrates that with consciousness, intention, and discernment, anyone can find their truth and follow it toward a more fulfilled and impactful life. And then also here, there's another description of power online here that says power is based on the principles such as integrity, courage, and compassion, while force is external and relies on fear, coercion, and manipulation. And this is the thing, is while you've got someone possibly that has put the this force onto you, that they're doing the fear, coercion, manipulation, you can always tap into that inner power that we all have, that integrity, that courage, that compassion, before, during, and after any of these kind of situations in all areas of your life.
And that's exactly right.
Yeah,
and that empowerment. That's it. Yeah. And that empowerment saved you in that situation with those three men, right? And that empowerment saved me in that toilet. And that empowerment saved my daughter. Yeah. And this is the key, right? So any sort of therapy where you're getting results, you're actually the lived experiences. That little girl I was talking about, that I was working with over COVID in America, from one session to another, she said to me, "Oh my God, Michelle, I've been laying down boundaries. This week I laid down a boundary and I felt so good. And she said, I would never have done that before, but I laid down a boundary. Someone out of rehab called her and they were drunk. And she said, how dare you call me? You know you're not meant to. This is not supporting me. If you've clearly, you've got an issue, go back to rehab. Don't call me. And I said, okay, so did you think about that first, or did that just come? She said that it just came. And that was that strategy. Someone was crossing her boundary. Her anger let her know. And she came in and had a best possible outcome for her, which is for that person not to come back into her life in that state, right? And it's exactly what you're saying. Thank you, Aldwyn. That was the most beautiful share, because that is exactly right.
I love that, Michelle. Oh my gosh, so great the work you're doing. So important for men and for women, for boys and for girls.
Totally,
and
totally.
You're born with your little bits and pieces, and that is how we categorize you as a boy or a girl. This going back to what Ken was saying.
Absolutely, yeah.
Confused,
I almost feel a little bad for the rant that I went on, but I'm, just like, I think for me the trigger word was grooming, and I was just like, it is such a serious subject. And I think even politically, though, it's even taken to quite a few more levels, which just makes it absolutely disgusting and horrific on levels that, so I had to kind of
I agree.
Yes.
Politically, we've got a big issue. It's huge, right?
Yeah.
Especially here in Australia, we've had some cases come up that really, were handled very badly by the police, and there's a lot of controversy around them, and there is a lot of work to be done in terms of changing the political tide around this subject. But I always say to people, we can't wait for that to happen. We actually have to drive that change, right? We as individuals must take responsibility to be responsible for ourselves in relation to the subject, and then we can be responsible in our communities. We can be better supportive of other people, and then our society can evolve around this, right? And so we are all responsible, and we have to start with us. And then we can drive that political change. I always
had celebrities that are dancing awkwardly in front of kids, and it's just that again, that's part of the grooming that they want for. But anyhow, I just had to say that, but bringing it back home.
Actually, can I just bring something up here, Kim? Because it is on task with what you're talking about. I read something a few months ago about how the World Health Organization, I think it was talking about teaching children, very young children, about their bodies and about sexual experience with their bodies. Now, for me, do you know the first lesson for me that I taught my children around sexual assault safety? It was when they were first able to walk and we were going out, and I said to them, now, if your eyes can't see mummy's eyes seeing your eyes, then mummy can't help you to keep you safe. So they learned a number of things in that they are in control of their own personal safety, right? So they have the confidence to know they can do something to feel safe. They didn't know what they were feeling safe from. I didn't tell them that, right? Because that was not age appropriate. I did teach them that sometimes there are people who get a bit broken and they do things, and sometimes you feel sad as a response. And when you feel sad and you stay sad for too long, it's not okay for you. So if you feel sad about something, come and talk to mummy about it. And say someone tells you that, you can't tell anybody or they will hurt your mummy. It's okay, because Mummy's been hurt by those people, and then Mummy learned all about that, and then she's been talking to those people. So I know how to talk to those people, and they can't hurt me. But it's important, so that you're not broken, that you tell me when you're sad. Now, I got it all, right? I am sad because such and such had a chocolate in their lunchbox. Oh, that's okay, right? But at the other end of that, they learned language. In my book, I give this example, and I'm going to just have to share this story. If we don't teach our children language, they can't communicate what's happening. There's a little girl and a school teacher, and the school teacher said, "How was your weekend?" And she said, "Oh, it was not a very good weekend." "Why not?" "Well, Daddy was in his garage a lot." Oh, okay. "And don't you like it when Daddy's in his garage?" "No, I don't. I don't like it when Daddy is in his garage." And she said, "Oh, okay. Does Mummy go to the garage?" She said, No, Mummy doesn't go to the garage. No. And she said, "Oh, okay." And then she said, "So where is Daddy's garage?" And she said to me, I honestly I don't know why I asked the question. I just asked the question, and the little girl pointed to her vagina.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
If we don't teach our children, then they're telling us that there's something going on, and the only way they know how. Right?
Wow.
We have to be able to give them a language that they can communicate with, and that language is going to let us know if something is happening that is not okay. But that is closing the gate after the horse has bolted, and it is important that we have remedy for that. But we also need to be giving them those strategies and that understanding. So my younger daughter was staying at a friend's place. Now, one of the rules when my children stayed at somebody's place was that that a parent had to be there all the time. Right? That's something that I always spoke to parents about. There was an older sibling, 13, and my daughter was 8, and parents often went out and walked the dog and left the 2 kids at home because the boy was 13. And I said, "No, if my daughter's staying, you cannot have no adult in the house, because if something happened, kids don't know what to do," right? So that was the agreement, and she'd stayed there a number of times. This particular time, the parents both went out to walk the dog. The girls got out of the bath and went into the bedroom, and in came the brother. And she did exactly what I taught her to do. She said, "Look, we're wet. We'll show you, we'll take off our towels and we'll show you things, but I'm wet. Just go out and we'll get dried off and everything, and then we'll let you know." And out he went. My daughter's 8. Think of 8-year-old child, right? Then she pushed the furniture across the door, and then he's busy trying to get in. Her friend is crying. "He's going to really hurt me if you don't let him in. If he doesn't get to do what he wants to do, he's really going to hurt me." And she just waited till the parents came home, and then she said, "Oh, I have to ring my mum. It's time to ring my mum." And then she gave me the code word. I went straight round and picked her up. I said, "Oh, Isabella has to come home right now." Got into the car. She told me what happened, and I said to her, "Okay, these are the options of the things that we can do about this," right? And so because it happened to her, not me, I'm a big believer that you can't take out of the hands of victims you can't ask them to do something more than they're capable of doing. Anyway, she said, yeah, she agreed. And I went and I spoke to both parents with him there and her there about what had happened, and that, that they have an issue and they need to address it, and that my daughter won't be sleeping over again. And I spoke directly to him as much as to them. Right. So that was the action that I took on that. And my daughter was very comfortable with that, and she was happy with that outcome. She got to say that wasn't okay that you did that. Right. It was a little bit like it's restorative justice in a way. Right. Yeah. to her, that was what she wanted to do, and that worked, and that actually empowered her, and it gave the parents the wake-up call, and it sent a message to him, not about anything that he was doing with anyone else, but simply that you don't get to do that with my children because I'm going to hold you accountable. Don't do it again or it'll get escalated, So, it's really important that our children have that power, empowerment, like you were saying, that empowerment to be able to take an action and to be safe and have the language to be able to communicate what's happened, or that we're going to be able to understand what it is that they're saying, so that when we're talking about Dad was in the garage and I had a really bad weekend, that we actually understand what it is, why that little girl had a bad weekend. Because here she is telling everyone and no one did anything.
Yeah, it's knowing to ask those questions and dig deeper on that. Very, very powerful, Michelle. Now, I believe you're going overseas and you've got a GoFundMe campaign. So can we talk about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. So I've been invited for International Women's Day to go to a women's empowerment conference, and it's all about sustainability and development of empowerment. So that's an ongoing growth thing, right? So they are a not-for-profit. It's IDIS, I-DIAS. You can Google them. There are Zoom links. So if you can't come in person, you can actually come in on your Zoom. There'll be a number of women speaking. So I think it's going to be a fabulous event, and I think it's going to be something that's going to be very, very valuable and well worth, getting on that Zoom, paying to come on as a Zoom member. So I was invited to go and be their ambassador and their keynote speaker to talk about my topic, because it is such an important topic and it does impact women. It impacts men, and I have worked with a lot of men one-on-one, but it does impact on women statistically more than men. So I jumped at the opportunity because I think that it's a really great opportunity to be able to share empowerment and the value of empowerment and possibility. What is possible if you have the right strategies and resources and skills, which is exactly what we've been talking about today. And so it is a not-for-profit, and I am volunteering. And so I used all our money writing the book, and so it's about, yes, it would be great if people could give me a little bit of a hand. I've been promoting, I've had two wonderful sponsors, people that have stepped up and made donations. Tricia Cotterill, who is Saffron Learning. She makes the most exquisite slideshows, makes your slides really informative for everybody on the spectrum of learning. So great to check her out. And then I've had another one come in. I've got to go on, and I will be thanking her. And so please, if you're a business, I'm more than happy to put you on the list of those people who are on Team Solution, right? Because sadly, there is no middle ground here. By doing nothing, we enable. By doing something, whatever that is, having a conversation, getting some counselling, talking to somebody, whatever that might look like, buying a book and reading it, or Googling, or whatever it is, taking an action is at least doing something. Learning how you can best be safe is doing something, So I have Team Solution. I always say to people, live in power and get the best possible outcome for you. And I think that this conference really is embodying that focus with that sustainability and development. So it's a great theme to be associated with. And if there's anyone out there who would like to be part of Team Solution and help me to get there, I'm flying economy, no fancy tickets or anything, right? But it certainly means that it helps. I've been invited to 3 conferences. If I can get some assistance to get to this one. It means I've got some money to get to the next one. Yeah. So please, if it's something that you feel passionate about, even if it's the price of a cup of coffee, it can make all the difference. That ripple effect. So please.
Excellent. We're looking for $6,500 for that campaign. And
it's the wish list. Anything, I'll be grateful. Yes.
Any amount would be fantastic. So just go to GoFundMe. It's gofundme.me, GoFundMe.me/41A2A48F, or just look up Michelle Sleight, which is spelt, Sleight is actually spelled SLEIGHT, and Michelle is with 2 L's and an E, MICHELLE. For that, and also for a copy of your book, then go to Amazon as well. We've got that link up here.
Or my website, yes, on my website. And also on my website, which is Michelle Insight, I think it is. Yeah. You will actually see up there, I've put up there my victim's impact statement, which is the document that I put in at sentencing, which actually brought about the big trial around setting a legal precedent. And I've also got up there my police statement. I put it up there because apparently, according to a lot of lawyers and things, it's a really good police statement. So I thought I'm going to put it up there just to share with people what a police statement looks like, how it's put together, and that it's not something scary. It's really empowering to even just get to that point, even if you choose not to go further. Just putting down your words in a police statement, should you ever change your mind, is very, very empowering. Yeah,
that's wonderful.
And of course, I'm here if people need me for a one-on-one, or if people are looking for, how do I teach my children? In the new year, look out on LinkedIn, because I'm going to be doing a free information session where you can ask anything, and I'll be talking about teaching children, and then I'll be running a workshop for parents around that as well, to help parents, because I know a lot of parents want to do something, but they don't know what.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And that's michelleinsight.com.au. So MICHELLE. Insight is INSIGHT.com.au. You'll find all the details, and you can email Michelle also at info@michelleinsight.com.au. And what's your favourite quote or motto you live by, Michelle, before we wrap up? We've gone well over time today.
Live empowered. Yes. And always have the best possible outcome for you, right?
Beautiful. Yeah. Love that. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure having you on the show. It's been an absolute wonderful episode. Thank you, Michelle. And Ken, where can people connect with you?
Before I get on to that, I just also want to just extend my gratitude for you, Michelle, once again, and just saying, empowering people. And doing it in such a way that, from the stories you share, it's effective, and that's what we need. We need more people like you, not necessarily more people that have the experience you do. Good Lord, I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but we need more people like you out there in the world, giving power to the people. And I applaud you very, very much for not only for taking your experiences that you've had in your life, to traumatic experiences, and deciding not to let them destroy your life, but then taking it a step further and giving tools and keys to other people so that they can be empowered through those situations. So I'm just extending that gratitude towards you.
Thank you, Ken.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
And with that, so how you guys can reach out to me and get to know me a little bit more is through my link tree. It's the simplest way there. And that is www.linktr.ee/FatFighterKen. And I'm just going to keep it quick and simple here. Hey, go there, find my calendar link. book an appointment with me. And hey, let's just have a get to know each other session. Let me get a chance to get to know you better, and have a chance of you getting to know me better and what it is I do. For those of you who may not know, I am a weight loss coach based on my own transformational experience of losing 62.5 pounds and keeping it off easily and sustainably for going on 6 years now. I teach other people how to do that without a diet, without upturning your life, and having it be sustainable and producing more long-lasting and permanent results. So you're not going from one diet to another, only to gain the weight back all the time. I help you to solve that problem so that once the weight's gone, it's gone for good, because you have changed up here. This is the key for permanent solutions for weight loss. So I'd like to get the chance to get to know you further and give you the opportunity to dive into me a little bit further. Book an appointment with me, connect with me, and through my link tree is the best way of doing it. And I'm going to beat you to it, Aldwyn. My favorite quote is, treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. And that is by Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, that's
great. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ken. That's a brilliant quote, and lots of ways to work with you too. That is awesome. And for those who want to connect with me, you will find all my links at linktree/Aldwyn. That is linktr.ee/Aldwyn, spelled ALDWYN. And in there you'll find my calendar link as well. If you want to be seen, heard, and known and get out to more people, then let's connect. You can book a call in there for some clarity and direction. And also we have a Present with Power masterclass coming up. You'll find the link in there. I'm teaming up with a lady from America. Actually, she's based in Berlin. She's been an opera singer for 30 years, a lady called Elizabeth King. Got a 4-hour masterclass teaching you how to present with power coming up very soon. And also the Global Good News Challenge continues every month. This is free marketing for you and a way you can share gratitude and good news. So no matter what has happened in your life, there's always things we can be grateful for, and always ways that we can lift the energy on the planet by sharing gratitude and good news. And we have a Step Up, Speak Up challenge as well that we did recently, and we've got a group going as well in Facebook that you can connect in there. So lots of ways we can connect. All the social media links are all in there. Check it out, linktree/Aldwyn, and my YouTube channel, of course. If you haven't subscribed yet on Media Queen TV, then please do that as well. And my quote today is actually by Margaret Mead, and it is, a small group of thoughtful people can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has. And that's what you're witnessing here today, a small group of thoughtful people changing the world. Thank you so much for joining us, for participating, for your comments. And if you are watching the replay, let us know what you thought of this episode. If you have any questions for us as well, put in the comments. And if you like what you've seen, then share the love. Make sure you like our Total Truth Show page on Facebook if you haven't already. And we'll be back with more amazing episodes soon. But before we wrap up this show, any final words? Michelle, over to you.
I'd like to say thank you to Ken and Aldwyn for creating this space to be able to share these truths. I think that people are looking for things, and it's a great way to actually find them. And you guys, thank you, because without that, there's no sharing of these sorts of things. So thank you very, very much. And I would just like to say to everyone who is in my tribe as a victim of sexual assault, or who is going to be at some point, remember, celebrate you, because the courage it takes for you to get through that and to keep on going is absolutely special, and so are you.
Love that. Michelle's beautiful. Beautiful. And Ken, any final words from you?
I would encourage each and every one of you, if you have been a victim, or you know somebody that's been a victim, or even if you're suspicious that you may become a victim sometime soon, I would encourage you, number one, I would encourage you to get this, to get her book. And number two, I would encourage you to reach out to Michelle in any way possible you can, to reach out to her and gain some insights and knowledge, because Michelle just may be the one thing you need to be able to move forward in your life and be empowered. And then lastly, thirdly, go check out her GoFundMe page and fund the work that she is doing, because she is really making a big difference on an extreme serious matter. And so support her in any way you can. You know, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. $5 can go a long way. $10 can go a long ways. You know, there's somebody listening, they have more than that and can give more than that. Great. But just, you know, do your best to support people like Michelle, because Michelle's making leaps and bounds as far as reaching into people's lives and empowering them.
Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd second that too. Michelle she's been there, done that. She's, you know, she knows what you're going through. And I think she's a fantastic person to learn from, to find mentorship with, to find console with, to find ways to empower yourself and to empower others who may have had similar situations happen, or, as Ken says, there might be something on the horizon that you have a sense that maybe something's not quite right. Well, here's your chance to speak up, to step up about it, reach out to Michelle, help her cause to go worldwide with this, to help end sexual assault and help to empower people who've been through these situations. It really is a wonderful cause. And, you know, you never know who'll be next, right? But if you don't speak up about it, then there'll be a lot more victims for sure. So thank you so much for the great work you do, Michelle.
I do have one last thing. So for those of you who are listening, so I'm not saying this for Aldwyn or for praise from Michelle. I'm not saying that, but you know, I'm putting my own words into action. So right now I'm in our checkout page with GoFundMe, and I'm going to donate a little bit of money towards Michelle. So I'd encourage you guys to do the same thing.
Yes. And I'll donate some money as well. So we'll put some money in. And even if it's a small amount of money, whatever you can afford towards the cause, if you've been moved in some way, then, you know, put some money in at least, and every little bit will help, right? Every drop makes up the ocean. So thank you so much once again. Thank you for joining us. Here's to a fantastic day or night wherever you are in the world, and look forward to staying connected on more amazing Total Truth Show episodes coming up. Thanks once again, Michelle. Thank you, Ken.
No worries. Thank you, everybody.